Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 100-Year Real Estate Investor. We're your host, Jake and Gino, and this is the show dedicated to long-term personal financial engineering. Gino, how's it going?
Jake, I'm doing great, bro. How you doing?
Always making it happen, big man. Today's guest is a former police officer and now hosts Real Estate Podcast. He's the best-selling author of 3 books. There's 4 R's in that one, and has been featured on CNN, Forbes, and HGTV. He's passionate about helping others build wealth through real estate, and we're excited to have him here today. So without further ado, David Greene, welcome to the show.
Good morning, gentlemen. How's it going?
It's going really well. We're excited to have you here, and let's just get this thing kicked off. Tell us about your journey into real estate investing.
Fell into it totally bass backwards, which is funny because we're always telling other people, you got to be intentional about what you want to do. And that's true, but I didn't know that at the time. So I graduated high school in 2001. The economy was just stepping into like a rip roaring phase where things were really starting to heat up in the housing market. I graduated college in 2006. And so this was like the height. I mean, at that time we were looking at prices that were going up faster than anybody could keep up with them. Builders were throwing up homes. I didn't really know much about real estate. We didn't have podcasts. We didn't have YouTube. You sort of just had to know a person that owned real estate if you wanted to understand how to get into that space or how that market worked. And I was really good at saving money. So that was one thing I did differently. I knew I could control that. So when all my buddies in college were partying and traveling and they were worried about the experience, which I just, even back then I thought was the stupidest way of looking at college. Like there's nothing else in life that will be like this experience. So why are you training to be really good at sleeping in, getting drunk, not paying attention? College was expensive. I had to pay. My parents paid for some of it. I paid for some of it. And so I didn't want to waste it. And I would work in restaurants, like fine dining, the nicest restaurants I could get my foot in every single night I could. So I would drive to school, I'd stay at home, living with my parents to keep my rent low. And then I would drive back home, change, drive to the restaurant, come home from work, do my homework, go to sleep, get up and do it again. So I was working like 4 to 5 nights a week in restaurants and going to school 3 to 4 times a week to get my degree. And I just stacked money. So when I graduated in 2006, I had about $100,000 in the bank. I had my car paid off and my school paid for, and had no idea what I was going to do. And right around that time, I got a job as a deputy sheriff, was able to get a loan. The housing market crashed, and I bought my first property for $195,000 in California.
How long are you a police officer for?
It's funny. I just officially retired 2 days ago. I've been
congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. I've been on like a medical leave for 4 years or so. It's been some time, but I started in 2008. And I was a deputy sheriff. And then when the market crashed, that's when I started buying real estate. But the problem was all of our salaries for deputies were tied to property values because property taxes pays for all those public services. So I got laid off, and then I had to move to a different agency. And I started over as a police officer there. And I did that until, and I was buying rentals with the money I would make from overtime. So I kind of just went back to what I knew, just save money, make money, and wait for opportunities. And that's when I started buying rental properties. California got too expensive. And so I started the whole long distance thing, which was the first book I wrote for BiggerPockets, and started buying in Arizona. Then I started buying in Florida. Then I started buying in Arkansas. And I kind of put really long distance investing is just having a system for real estate investing.
But how did you do the police officer and the real estate? I mean, give the listeners a look into your life.
You know, he was doing Ruth Chris in college and mom and dad. Like this is a walk in the park for him, man.
Dude, I mean, you're getting shot at by day, and at nighttime you're going to collect rents, and those people are giving you a headache. So it must be a stressful few years, bro.
It is a mindset. That is such a good question because it honestly isn't hard. If you are comparing it to something that I would say is hard, okay? So I've had this theory that I've noticed with people that I've hired. If you come work for me in any of my businesses and I'm asking you to do the hardest thing you've ever done, you come into work every day like, this is ridiculous. They just want me to make 10 phone calls to people I don't even know. You know, they want me to solve this problem. They're not telling me how to do it. Those people have a terrible attitude. But if I hired a Navy SEAL and I was like, call 100 people today and say the script, they would say, you're going to tell me the script. You're going to give me the phone. You're going to give me a chair. I just have to do this with my finger. Like I don't have to be doing push-ups at the same time. I don't have to be swimming in shark infested waters. To a Navy SEAL, that would seem very easy. So when I was working as a police officer, I probably average 80 to 100 hours a week. That was like, I just kept my foot on the gas for years with all this overtime. So when I had to buy a house, I had to realize what are the elements that I need to understand to know if this is a good deal or not. And I would just kind of make like a checklist. Like it became a pattern. I've done this over and over and over. I know what I got to ask. And then I would tell the agents, hey, I'm going to ask you a question. You're going to respond with an emoji that's like up or down. Okay. So I got to the point where they would send an address. I would hit copy. I would paste it and I would text it to a property manager. They would text me a thumbs up because they knew exactly what I wanted them to look into. I would text back the agent a number. They already knew my inspection period that I wanted, what my earnest money was going to be. They had my lender's information to get the pre-approval letter. They would write an offer for that number. They would text me when it was ready. I would open my DocuSign on my phone. I would sign it. Offer would be sent. So I could do that at any job you have. You have slow periods in the day where you check your Facebook, you check your text messages, you know, whatever you're no one's pedal to the metal the entire time they're working. And I just learned to fill in those gaps with something productive. And it actually was surprisingly easy compared to what people think.
Man, all mindset there for sure. So you're acquiring these investment properties. You have rentals on board. What's the outlook for these? Are these long-term holds doing? And if so, how does that long-termism, play into your investing mindset?
Yeah, at the time I was buying everything, I was intending to hold it forever. I wasn't really thinking about it too much. And it was only later in my career where I started to think, all right, I got like 50 single family homes. This is almost every day a new problem coming in on one of them. And it's not a bad problem. It's a property manager saying, hey, the neighbor wants you to kick in half the money for a fence. Hey, this thing broke. There's a rodent problem over here. This tree needs to come down. And every time they'd be like, we want $3,900 to take this tree down. Well, if I made a call, I could find a person that would do it for $1,100, or I'd find the tree doesn't need to be taken down. It needs to be trimmed or something. So what would happen is I would catch myself getting sucked into all these little things that weren't really dollar productive. But if I just let someone else handle it, it would be just money would be flying out the door. And I had this little moment where I thought doesn't make sense at this point in my career to have 50 small houses like this. I should have one apartment complex, or I should have 10 nicer homes, or there's a more efficient way. So I stopped looking at it like a property, and I started looking at it like, how much equity do I have and how much cash flow is it bringing in? It was a principle in essence. And once I saw it like that, it was kind of being like Neo in the Matrix, where you're looking at the code in the world that you're living in. I'm like, oh, I could move this capital into this area and it won't irritate me as much. It won't become a problem. It will perform better. I'll have the value add principle that will be working for me, or this area is growing faster than other areas. And so I'll be making money passively just because I moved money that I had already made that was stored in the form of real estate into a different space. So I knew I wanted to own it forever, but what shifted was thinking I'm not going to own it in the same format. Maybe that's not probably the best word, but like I can own it.
There's a better alignment out there for you,
yes,
right?
Yes.
Yeah, very interesting.
If it don't cash flow, you let the grass grow, as Jake and Gino like to say. But more importantly, how has that changed your life? That mindset shift, that paradigm shift. People see the world as they are, not as it is. Now you've seen a different light. You've seen the way, the long-termism. How has that changed your life?
I started to see the principles that work in real estate investing also work in other parts of life. So I didn't just get a bunch of houses. I got a bunch of knowledge and information about how money works, about how properties work. I started to learn, there's these patterns would emerge. Like the sellers that I got the best deals from all tended to be at the same stage in life. Like they start off, everybody wants to buy everything they can. And then as they grow, by the end, they're like, I just want to play defense. I don't want to have to worry about all these problems. So I started to target the people that had the mindset of, I don't want to own property anymore, as more likely to get deals. I started to learn how emotional people make decisions when it comes to like selling a property, that you can write an offer on a deal and they'll give you a hard no. But 4 weeks later, that hard no might turn into a, hey, is that guy still interested? And you're getting a completely different deal. And I realized it was skills and information that I had been building, not just accumulating properties. Well, those skills and information, just like real estate, can be moved into different elements of life. So now I'm starting businesses using some of those same skills that are helping me to make money for other people selling their houses. I'm taking the momentum that I have in one area of my life and moving it into another opportunity where I can make money, in the same that I could take a equity in one property and move it into another area where it would serve me better. So I think the biggest shift was that I realized like doing that was a form of investing in myself. And when you're invested in yourself, everywhere you go and everything you touch can be better. And that's true for relationships, for health and fitness, for the impact you make on other people, for the quality of the words that you speak, right? Like all of that came out of the work that I did in real estate investing.
Dude, you just had like an epiphany bomb blow up in my head. So I want you to go back to describe the life cycle of these investors that you're buying from, and really paint the picture of the avatar. Because what I heard is there's people that kind of go, they buy 2, 3, 4 deals, and then they hold them for a while, they stop acquiring, and then at some point they're going to be selling to you. So if I'm correct and I heard you correctly, describe that avatar, the relationship that you had with them, and then how you ultimately align with these folks.
So people start off where they're trying to escape some form of pain. That's why most people make the decision they do. I'm tired of being lonely. I want to get a girlfriend. I'm tired of being broke. I want to get a job. I'm tired of being kind of broke. I want to get a better job. Real estate investing is just another route that people can use to escape pain. That if you look at it like building a cake, the ingredients are delayed gratification, having some capital, having a little bit of knowledge. You can bake this cake and you can escape pain. Most human beings, once they get out of pain, they're done. They don't understand momentum is actually what successful people have accomplished. Like you can get out of being out of shape and then stop, and you're eventually going to have to get back into the gym again. And it's going to be really hard because you fell out of shape. Well, when you're going to the gym every day, it's not hard to go to the gym. It actually becomes fun. It's like an itch you got to scratch, and momentum is propelling you towards working out more. Same is true with eating. When you start eating healthier foods, that becomes what you want to be eating. The same is true in a relationship. You start serving the other person, it starts to become fun and you find joy in serving. And it's not hard work to put someone's need before yourself. Well, most investors, they get a little bit of success and like, hey, I'm not in pain. I have enough money to do what I want. They stop.
Boom.
So they end up with these properties that got them out of pain, but they didn't continue to build on the momentum. And eventually they fall into disrepair. They have to deal with problems and they're not paying attention to it anymore. The property manager isn't paying very much attention and they're not paying attention to the property manager. And so they get into a point where now the properties are causing them pain. What do? I want to get out of the pain. How quickly can I get out of this pain? Right. And that's where you step in to buy the properties because you're the person that can take away the pain.
Dude, we need an infographic on this, like ASAP, because it's such a beautifully, well portrayed life cycle. And these people, they fail, they get fat and happy. The property's making them some money. They neglect it. And then what we see called the death spiral sometimes. Then they refuse to raise rents. And they're like, just don't call me and I'll keep your rent suppressed. And we've seen this so many times. We've had literally residents come up to us after closing because we replaced their bleeping stove. Which, is this a big deal? Like, are we doing the bare minimum now? And they start crying because they couldn't understand why we did it and the people prior to them did not. Gino, you have something to say?
Yeah, David, real quick. What you're discussing and describing is what we're trying to do with Jake and Gino. We're trying to create multifamily entrepreneurs. People get into real estate. They don't understand that it's an entrepreneurial venture. They don't understand that they need to be the asset manager. They're looking at just landlording. They're not looking at scaling up. They're not looking to get additional units. They're not looking to hire. They're looking to be like the Jake and Gino jabronis, the I'm a mentality. I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And that works really good until 30, 40, 50 units. But then I'm going to get burned out. And I'm going to get some systems.
I'm going to sell.
And that's what I'm a sell. And that's really important. And also, everybody, I moved away from pain at the restaurant. I had one restaurant for 20 years, 5 years, 1,500 multifamily units. I was thankful that I had Jake as a partner and that I understood that it is a multifamily entrepreneurial venture. It's okay to move away from pain. Understand that. That's what I needed. But we all want to have an empowering life and move towards pleasure. That's what we want to do. And to become an entrepreneur, to become that visionary, to set up a nice little portfolio of 50, 60, 100 units, to understand that you don't need to do it all by yourself. That's what long-term thinking is about. We're talking about buying in decades, not buying a deal and worrying about what's going to happen next quarter. Worry about what's going to happen 5 or 6 or 10 years down the road. That's the real genesis and the thought process of why we created this show. It's not just instant gratification. It's really planning out an amazing life. And you're going to have inflection points. You're going to grow throughout the journey. And David has grown throughout the journey, starting from being a cop all the way going into, buying single family homes, buying multiple businesses, being the face of BiggerPockets. I mean, that's been a huge inflection. He's had so many inflection points in his life and growth. And as he's gone through those different levels, he's grown even more. And more importantly, he's provided value and he's learned how to provide value. So I have no question. If you just want to piggyback off of that, David
Pockets
profession.
I would say what everyone craves is for things to be easy. It can be bad that when you want the easy road, that's when you're vulnerable to somebody lying to you, selling something to you, right? Like we've all had that friend that falls for the wrong person and we're like, it's never that easy. She just wants your money or she's taking advantage of you, right? Or that guy just wants to sleep with you. He's not in love with you. People don't fall in love with you the second day they know you. So there is a temptation for the easy life that can be bad, but it comes from, I think, a deeper understanding that if I build up the right skills and I stick with something long enough, it does become easier. Like for you guys to take down a deal right now probably feels like a cakewalk compared to when you first got started. Like you've done it enough times.
Way less fear. Used to shit my pants the night before a deal.
And way more
Big time.
efficiency too.
Yeah.
You spot the BS way faster.
Yeah.
You know human beings better. You can, oh, this is going to go wrong and that's going to go wrong. So let's get on top of that right now. As you do things more, they become easier. And
we actually absorb the BS now. And I think I don't even want to move away from that. Like we used to fight the BS, and there's a change in mentality because when we see the BS, we know there's opportunity and we try to actually accommodate for it, where we used to call it out and we would be more like combative about it. And now we actually look to solve the BS because all we're looking to do is take the asset away from the person that's not operating it properly.
So they want to get rid of their pain.
Yeah. But we're not looking to fight them on it. We want to make it easier for them to exit. Because it's hard to find these things, right? So it's like
you probably build your team around solving those problems.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Right? Which makes solving those problems easier than when you first got started, right?
Yeah.
So there is a point where if you keep doing it, it does become easier. You know, like when you first start trying to. And that's what every human being is thinking in their head. I would do it if it was easy, if it wasn't miserable all the time. Well,
then everybody's going to do it too.
Everyone should do it, but they have to expect it's going to suck at first. It's what I'm getting at is this idea that momentum is what makes things easy. The longer you guys have done this, you've gotten better bookkeepers, you've gotten better systems, you've gotten better resources, your problem solving has gotten better, your ability to articulate something, your teamwork, your vision, all of it gets easier. That makes the whole process better. But that is because you took a step, you figured something out, you had a new platform to take a higher step so you could figure that out. And as you build momentum, problems that used to seem insurmountable, they just get flattened in front of you. And that's why you have to take like a long-term approach to doing something. If you say, I want to be really fit, it doesn't happen in 3 workouts. It doesn't matter how much energy you put into 3 workouts. It won't happen. It is about building momentum, slowly getting things moving in your direction. You get in a community of other people that work out. You start to make friends. You learn how to use the machines better. You start to eat differently. It becomes a part of your identity. Real estate investing is like that too. And so what I would always tell people is escaping pain is what's going to jumpstart you, but don't put all that energy in and then stop. The example that I have would be snowboarding. So when I was like 18, 19 years old, my friends went snowboarding with me. They took me on Black Diamond Hills for literally my first run was on I was terrified.
Like you got some good friends.
Yes, it was horrible. Right. So I never really enjoyed snowboarding, but I went a handful of times, like maybe over 10, 12 years, I've gone like 6 times, right? I could get down a mountain, but it is exhausting. It's hard. It's not fun. The whole time you're like holding a squat so you don't fall down. I hate snowboarding. Well, the problem is that every time I've gone has been wasted because I never built on it. I never got to the point where snowboarding becomes fun. And this is the problem when you start something and quit it, is the learning curve in the beginning is always miserable. You're inefficient, you suck, you burn energy, you make mistakes, you feel stupid. That's normal. Well, if I stuck with snowboarding, it would have got to where it wasn't hard and it actually became fun. And investing, it works the same way.
And it's really important. Let me just finish that point. It's about your peer group. I mean, Dave is part of BiggerPockets. They're all real estate investors. Jake and Gino has a mentorship community. It's about real estate investors. Who are you surrounding yourself with? Your peer group is so important because they're going to hold you accountable. Unless you have David's friends who are trying to kill you. I mean, maybe that's not a good analogy there. But seriously, get around people who are doing it. Get around people who are going to give you, that accountability that you need. Because that momentum is only going to be received, and you're only going to get that momentum if you hold yourself accountable to it.
Yeah, and I think the momentum is interesting. I look at it as not taking your foot off the gas, because you get the momentum going, but the key to it is that if you've been in it for 3-4 years and now you start to slough off and think, oh, this is easy, I'm just going to, step away from it. That's when shit's going to start going wrong. So I think the momentum is crucial, but you got to keep the foot, on the gas and continuing making it a well-oiled machine. Otherwise, stuff will go wrong. So I completely agree with that.
Yeah. All the effort you put into it already will be wasted.
Yeah, so, you got to stay active. Yeah,
and the deals that we're buying from other people are often the person who stopped with building momentum. They took their foot off the gas. They stopped paying attention to their asset class. The next thing you know, that the rents haven't been raised in however long it is, and they're doing that, like you said. If I don't raise my rents, then it'll avoid pain. The tenant might not leave if I keep the rents low. Well, then when you want to go sell your asset, you're going to get way less money for it because the rents are really low. Or God forbid you're in a market like mine where there's rent control and you can't get it up and you can't get rid of the tenant. And like you've created a permanent problem with that thing because your only motivation was to avoid pain. So as I've grown, I've learned to understand that avoiding pain is good to get you started, but it shouldn't be the end goal, because then you'll quit. Momentum is what you're really chasing. And that's with sticking with something. Like, that's why Joe Rogan has the biggest podcast in the world. He's got so much momentum because he started this first and he never quit, and he kept going for years. And then he started getting good guests. And so he got more listeners and he got to the top of the pack. And now he's getting Elon Musk. He can get the president of the United States. He can get anyone he wants. He's not dropping off the top spot anytime soon. That's all what momentum gets you.
Created the juggernaut.
Yep.
How do you apply values-based decision-making to your business ventures?
What would be an example in your guys' definition of values?
Yeah. So think about this. You have your core values, right? And when you're letting someone into your life, you're basing it on your values, right? When you're hiring somebody, you're basing that hire more so on your values that you believe in versus, the skill set's important, right? If there's someone that needs to exit your life, you're looking at your values and saying, is there a values disalignment here? Because so many times in my life, when I've had to, and this is the thing, so many of the hardest things in business is when you've had a really strong team member and you've had to let them go because the values weren't there. So I'm just wondering, and maybe you don't, but if you do, how do you apply values to your decision making within the business? That's
a really good question. I would start with, most human beings in some capacity are making values-based decisions already. They don't realize it, but it's happening subconsciously. The problem, I think, for most people is that they are taking their own internal value system that they may not be aware of themselves, projecting it onto people they hire and attracting people that have the same value system as them. Now, we tend to notice a problem with values in someone else and not in ourselves. So when I've hired someone that didn't work out, we had like an issue with integrity, or like that happens to me a lot, especially because in this position, I draw a lot of people that think getting on my team is going to be this golden ticket that just takes them right to wealth. And then you have to let them go because of those issues. I often saw the signs that this was going to be a problem, but chose to look past it and try to see the best because it was easier, because I was being overly optimistic, because I didn't want to have to go through the hiring process. It was a lot of work. So the problem was my internal value of, I don't want to put the work up front to get the right hire, led to that, me hiring someone with values that hurt our customer base and hurt myself. So I think I've heard you guys mention extreme ownership, which I'm such a huge fan of. When you do make a bad hire, it is very easy to say that person was bad, we got to let them go. It's much harder to say, what part of me was bad that allowed me to make that hire in the first place and get to the position where they were able to hurt my clients, hurt the other team members, hurt the culture of our company. So eventually that whole finger pointing comes all right back around. It's pointed at me, and I got to look at my own values. And this is another reason that I think pushing to higher heights sort of forces you to develop as a human being. Because if you're looking at it that way, you spend most of your day realizing this is my flaw, these are my issues, and you can't get away from them.
Dude, you bring up such an interesting point, because we're hiring a new acquisitions person right now, right? And we've had a lot of people that will put it out there and like they'll know of like Jake and Gino, and they want to come in and do multifamily and this, that, and the other thing. So they'll come in from different states. And this time around, I'm actually limiting it to someone that's local. And I'm really looking for someone that actually doesn't know who we are, because I want to find that person that's going to come in and really absorb the role, not because they see, oh, like this is like a way to your point, I'm going to run up the multifamily ladder like that. I want someone that's going to come in, eat humble pie and grind, and not look at, some kind of Instagram flash and think, oh, I'm moving across the country to do that. Because I think that if I can find the person with the right values, and I hate the bleeping Patriots, I really do, but we run a ship very similar to that sort of humble pie, do your job mentality. And when someone sees stuff on Instagram, they might get a different perception of what this really is. And that's why I'm looking for somebody local that we can kind of continue to build off from. So that's very interesting that you brought that up. It kind of hit me right between the eyes.
The best hires I've had were either they were my friends before I was like wealthy or famous. So there's the relationship we have is what they won't stray too far because they don't want to damage the relationship. Or people who didn't know who BiggerPockets was, didn't know who I am. They just wanted a job. They wanted to keep their boss happy. They work out great. The temptation is when you get these people that think, oh my God, if I go work for those guys for 3 years, I'll learn how to be a badass. I'll become a super duper millionaire and they'll pay me to do it. And then I'll leave and then they can figure out how to fill the vacancy. It's like, it's the worst of both worlds. And I've noticed in general, I don't want my Instagram to be as flashy because you are then attracting people that are drawn to you for that reason. And that's like a whole other issue that we could get into is like the girls that are posting pictures of their bodies online and they get a lot of followers.
I haven't noticed.
Yeah. Right. Like it's a very big thing. And those are the same. Yeah. But those are the same people that complain, guys only like me for one reason. Like you'll always hear that come out of it, right? The guys that are taking pictures in somebody else's Ferrari and posting it on their own thing and calling themselves a CEO or an entrepreneur. And their posts always start with, people always ask me, and then they brag about themselves. You know what I'm talking about? Like nobody asked you that ever. I've never seen a human being.
No one's asked you a question, right? Because you haven't done anything yet.
That's right. Those are the same people that are like the loneliest because they wonder why all their friends only like them for one reason. They've created that world by their own internal value system. And now that's what they're drawing to them.
Dave, before I wrap up the show, where can the listeners get a hold of you? We could go on for hours and hours. I think everyone should go back and listen to this because you can see the progression of David's life going from college all the way to where he is right now, continuing to build his brand. Where can the listeners get a hold of you?
You can find me online everywhere on social media at David Greene 24. I have a YouTube that's David Greene Real Estate, pretty easy to remember. And then if you go to davidgreenemastermind.com, you can check out a group, like you said, a peer group that I have where we teach people how to build wealth through real estate, but in other ways as well.
Yeah, I want to piggyback real quick off the last question before you recap, Gino, because there's something we've seen with some of our millennial hires in the past and some of the new hires where they have this get their itis. And you've touched on it a little bit there with your last sort of segment there. Can you kind of elaborate on your experience with folks kind of coming in that have demonstrated this get their itis and how that's worked out?
I think get their itis is based in, I want to get out of pain. I'm not getting attention. I'm not happy with my life. I don't feel like I'm respected. I don't know who I am. So if I could become really successful.
There's a lot there to unpack, though. I mean, you just went real fast with that, but guys, let that sink in what he just said. That was some powerful shit, actually. That's pretty impressive. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you pointing it out. That is the motivational factor. That is what is driving them to work hard. And if that's the case, that when you get there, you're going to have a horrible epiphany that hits you that you still don't like yourself, but now you have no hope. Because your hope in liking your life or liking yourself was getting more money, getting this status, getting what you think other people have. And that is the most depressing thing ever. When what was driving you to get there was your hope that was sustaining you. And then you get to the top of the mountain and you're like, I'm still me and I'm still miserable. And my dad still left and I still can't find someone who's going to love me or whatever the issue is you're carrying. It hits hard. And that's where people lose their wealth. Like they lose that focus, they lose that momentum, and they just fall right back down to the bottom. So as you're climbing, like there's some joy in climbing the hill. There's some joy in progress. Progress is always fun, but you got to be really honest with yourself about what is driving you. Cause that demon that's chasing you, it catches you when you stop, and it can be terrible and it drag you right back down to the bottom.
The scariest thing about what you just said and that kind of that picture you painted of those individuals is I think you just described like 75% of politicians. And that's probably the scariest thing that's going on with our country right now. So anyways.
No, that's a great point. I mean, in general, politicians only get where they are if you vote for them. You only vote for people in general that tell you what you want to hear. So we created a system where we're incentivized to be lied to. And then we point the finger at the politicians and we say they're all terrible. Well, they're only terrible because they're giving me what I want.
Yeah.
Right. I'm the terrible. They're
telling you they are, and then they're not. So you hire like narcissistic maniacs, and then we wonder why shit's going wrong. Right.
That's exactly right. But if how else do you win a popularity contest? You got to be a narcissistic maniac, right? So short story is quit depending on politicians to make your life better, and then we don't have to worry about this. Take
virtual hug, man. Hell yes. Hell yes. All right, G-Dad, take us home.
David Greene, 2006, graduates college. Starts buying homes, becomes a deputy sheriff. Throughout that process, actually retired, I think 2 days ago, he said?
Yes, sir.
Amazing. And it's been an amazing story. I met David back in 2019 in the airport after the first BiggerPockets conference. Gives me a book of Oren Klaff. I'm like, I like this dude. Started reading the book, reconnected. We've been on the BiggerPockets podcast with him. He's had an amazing journey. What I love about it, he's had so many different inflection points, so many different growth points, and he hasn't stopped. Momentum is all about growth, right? We had that growth mindset. That's one of our core values as well. And I can hear that emanating from David as well. So for everyone out there, choose your niche, focus on it. If you're moving away from pain, that's okay, but always think about moving towards pleasure and start now. If you're on the fence about saying, hey, real estate's too expensive right now, it's been expensive forever. You can always make those excuses. Understand what your pain is and start moving towards that pleasure, everyone.
Very cool. Dave, thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks, guys. Had a blast.
Okay, we'll see you.